What do you do when someone judges you, when they make assumptions based on nothing but their own biases? Naomi Richards knew exactly what to do. It was a typical Saturday afternoon, and the Willow Field Mall pulsed with life. Families ambled through stores, teenagers chattered over towering sodas, and shoppers juggled bags filled with newly acquired treasures. Amid the whirl of activity, Naomi moved with quiet purpose, a break from her usual frenzy as a freelance writer. Her outfit was simple, well-worn jeans, a cozy cardigan, sneakers. Comfort, above all, was her priority, though not everyone seemed to understand that. Naomi paused near a bench in the central atrium, her moment of peace shattered when a voice sliced through the air. It was sharp, clipped, and dripping with impatience. "Excuse me, do you even belong here?" The woman stood a few feet away, her tailored blazer sharp enough to cut glass, oversized sunglasses perched on her nose like a shield. Clutching a designer purse, she looked every bit the image of someone who was used to authority, someone who never heard the word no. Her lips curled into a subtle sneer as she swept her eyes over Naomi, scanning her like an unwanted nuisance. "I'm sorry?" Naomi asked, confusion rippling through her words. The woman repeated herself, her tone even colder now. "You heard me. You're loitering. People like you make it hard for businesses to keep their spaces clean and welcoming." Naomi blinked, stunned by the words. Was she hearing this correctly? Loitering? It didn't even make sense. Loitering? Naomi echoed, her voice trembling slightly. "I'm just sitting here." The woman crossed her arms, her face hardening. "I suppose you're waiting for someone to give you a handout, or maybe you're casing the place." Naomi's stomach tightened. It wasn't just the words. It was the venom in her voice, the accusation that hung in the air like a weight. Every eye in the vicinity seemed to shift toward them. Naomi felt the pressure of their stares but remained rooted to the spot, not budging an inch. Her voice was calm but firm as she met the woman's gaze. "Ma'am, I think you've made a mistake." The woman scoffed, her laugh sharp and humorless. "Oh, I doubt it. You can't expect to walk into a place like this and not stand out." And just like that, the crowd began to gather. Shoppers slowed, their eyes flickering with curiosity, while some exchanged awkward glances. Whispers snaked through the air, expressions dancing between discomfort and fascination. Yet, no one stepped in, no one intervened. The tension was building, and everyone could feel it. Naomi took a slow, steadying breath, trying to calm the storm inside her. The buzz of the mall seemed to fade into the background, eclipsed by the sharpness of the woman's voice, dripping with disdain. It wasn't just the accusation, it was the confidence, the way the woman spoke as if her assumptions were indisputable facts. "You have no idea who I am or why I'm here," Naomi said, her voice unwavering. "And yet you feel entitled to judge me." The woman arched a brow, flipping her hair over her shoulder with practiced elegance. "I don't need to know you to see what's obvious. Look at you. You're not shopping. You're just sitting here. Taking up space. Making people uncomfortable. Do you even have a job?" A ripple of shock moved through the crowd. Naomi could feel the weight of the looks, a mix of surprise, discomfort, and, was that agreement? Her gaze locked onto a young mother clutching her child's hand. The mother's lips were pressed tightly together, her brow furrowed, but she stayed silent. Naomi stood, her movements slow and deliberate, making sure to meet the woman's eyes. She wasn't going to shrink under this stranger's judgment. "I do have a job," Naomi said, her words sharp but steady. "In fact, I work hard to support myself and my family. And for the record, I'm sitting here because I can. Because this is a public space." The woman took a small step back, the force of Naomi's words catching her off guard. But she quickly recovered, smirking, her posture not shifting an inch. "Of course you'd say that. People like you always have an excuse." "People like me?" Naomi repeated, her voice steady now, cutting through the tension. "And what exactly does that mean?" The woman faltered for a moment, her confident stance beginning to crack as the crowd pressed in closer. Naomi could hear a teenage boy's phone click as he started recording. Let them, she thought. Let them witness this. "You know exactly what I mean," the woman finally said, her voice quieter now, but the venom still cutting through every syllable. "I'm just saying what everyone else is thinking." "No," Naomi responded firmly, her tone unwavering. "You're saying what you've been taught to think. There's a difference." A murmur swept through the crowd, the tension palpable. For the first time, the woman's confident mask slipped, and Naomi could see it. Her gaze flickered nervously toward the growing onlookers. Naomi pressed forward, stepping closer, her voice dropping but still piercing. You saw me, and instead of seeing a person, you saw a stereotype. And you thought it was your place to police me. Why is that? The woman opened her mouth to respond, but the words stuck. Her gaze darted toward the crowd, now buzzing with murmurs. Someone in the back muttered, "She's got a point." Naomi's words hung in the air, heavy and unyielding. She could feel the shift. This wasn't just a confrontation anymore, it was something more. Something real. If I were dressed differently, Naomi continued, her voice steady, if my skin were a shade lighter, would you have said a word to me? Or would I have just been another shopper in the mall? The woman's cheeks flushed. The confidence that had once been her shield was beginning to crumble, and she glanced around for support. But there was none. Even those who had seemed to agree with her were silent now, their eyes averted. Silence reigned, but it wasn't enough to diffuse the rising tension. Something had to give. Naomi stepped back, her voice steady, yet carrying a weight of understanding. I get it, she said, folding her arms. You think you're protecting something. But what are you so afraid of? The woman hesitated, visibly caught off guard by the question. She glanced at the crowd, her composure unraveling bit by bit. Finally, after a long pause, she exhaled sharply, her voice low and reluctant. I grew up with nothing, she admitted. My parents lost everything in the Russian. I know what it's like to feel invisible, to feel like people are judging you before they even know you. Naomi tilted her head slightly, surprised by the admission. The crowd seemed to hold its breath, the weight of her words settling into the air. You think that gives you the right to judge others? Naomi asked, a mix of disbelief and empathy in her voice. Do you realize what you're doing? You've become the very thing you hate, someone who sees people as less than because of their circumstances. The woman flinched, as though Naomi's words had struck deep. I didn't mean it like that, she defended weakly. But I think you can do better, Naomi said gently. The words settled between them, a quiet truth. The mall was silent except for the hum of distant voices and the soft rustle of shopping bags. Naomi stepped back, gesturing for the woman to sit beside her. The woman hesitated but, as if compelled by something deeper, she sat down, clutching her designer purse tightly. Naomi took a moment before beginning to share her own story. You know, I wasn't always comfortable standing up for myself, she said. I grew up in a small town where people judged me before I even spoke. It's exhausting, fighting those assumptions every day. But I realized something, how people see you says more about them than it does about you. The woman's eyes softened, her posture loosening as Naomi's words took root. She looked like someone searching for a lifeline, trying to make sense of her own actions. I get that fear can make us do ugly things, Naomi continued. But the problem isn't yourself. It's what we do with it. What do you do when someone judges you based on nothing but their assumptions? Naomi had an answer ready, though she hadn't known it until now. It was a Saturday afternoon, and Willow Field Mall was alive with its usual hum. Families strolled through aisles, teenagers shared laughter over oversized sodas, and shoppers balanced bags of new purchases with practiced ease. Naomi Richards moved through the crowd with quiet determination. Today wasn't about shopping, it was about taking a breather from the whirlwind of her freelance writing life. Her outfit was simple, a cardigan, well-worn jeans, and sneakers, but it was enough. Comfort mattered more than appearances, and Naomi wore that truth without hesitation. Yet not everyone saw it that way. As she paused near a bench in the atrium, a voice sliced through the air, sharp and condescending. Excuse me. Do you even belong here? Naomi turned, her pulse quickening. A woman stood nearby, a picture of polished elegance in a tailored blazer and oversized sunglasses. The designer purse clutched in her hands was less an accessory and more a weapon. This woman, perhaps in her mid-50s, radiated an air of entitlement, someone who seldom heard the word no. Her lips curled into a faint sneer, and her eyes flicked over Naomi like she was scanning for imperfections. Naomi's confusion deepened. I'm sorry, Naomi said, trying to grasp what was happening. You heard me. The woman's tone hardened, each word sharp. You're loitering. People like you make it hard for businesses to keep their spaces clean and welcoming. Loitering? Naomi blinked, momentarily unsure if she had heard correctly. The accusation was so sudden, so unjustified, it felt like a surreal slap. She repeated it, barely above a whisper, loitering. "I'm just sitting here." The woman scoffed, crossing her arms. "I suppose you're waiting for someone to give you a handout? Or maybe you're casing the place." Naomi's stomach clenched. It wasn't just what was being said, it was the venom in the woman's voice, the assumptions in her words. And worse, Naomi could feel the eyes of everyone around her turning their focus to the exchange. The weight of those stares hung heavy. But she didn't flinch. She didn't budge from the bench. "Ma'am," Naomi said, her voice calm yet resolute, "I think you've made a mistake." The woman's laugh rang out, humorless and cold. "Oh, I doubt it. You can't expect to walk into a place like this and not stand out." The crowd, which had been idly watching, began to stir. Footsteps slowed. A ripple of curiosity spread among the onlookers, their expressions shifting from discomfort to something else, an uncomfortable fascination. A teenager with a hoodie pulled out his phone, angling it to record. Naomi noticed. "Good. Let them see. Let them hear every word." "You know exactly what I mean," the woman continued, her voice lowered but no less cutting. "You can't expect to fit in here. Look at you. You're not shopping. You're just sitting there, taking up space, making people uncomfortable. Do you even have a job?" A ripple of tension ran through the crowd. Naomi's gaze flickered from face to face, noting the discomfort. The woman's words were harsh, but Naomi could also see the mix of reactions. Some faces flushed with shame, others looked unsure. But the crowd, though silent, was no longer passive. They were waiting. Naomi, still standing, slowly rose from the bench. Her movements were deliberate. She wasn't about to shrink from this encounter, no matter how heavy the woman's words might feel. She met the woman's gaze, unwavering. "I do have a job," Naomi said firmly. "In fact, I work hard to support myself and my family. And for the record, I'm sitting here because I can. This is a public space." The woman took a step back, as though Naomi's words had hit her harder than she expected. But it didn't take long for her to recover. Her lips curled into a condescending smirk. "Of course you'd say that," she sneered. "People like you always have an excuse." "People like me?" Naomi repeated, her voice cold and sharp now. "And what exactly does that mean?" The woman hesitated, her composure faltering. The crowd had thickened now, drawn in by the confrontation. Some had even started recording, their phones raised like witnesses. The air crackled with anticipation. Naomi could feel the shift. "Go ahead," Naomi said, her eyes challenging. "Say it." The woman hesitated again, this time visibly wrestling with her words. Naomi stood her ground, waiting for the insult that was bound to come. The crowd leaned in closer, the tension becoming almost palpable. "You know exactly what I mean," the woman said finally, her voice quieter now, almost sheepish. "I'm just saying what everyone else is thinking." "No," Naomi said, her voice resolute. "You're saying what you've been taught to think. There's a difference." A murmur spread through the crowd. Naomi could see the shift, the way the woman's self-assurance cracked, ever so slightly. For the first time, the woman's gaze flickered nervously over the growing audience. And that was when Naomi saw it, an opening. "You saw me," Naomi said, her tone softer now, more understanding. "And instead of seeing a person, you saw a stereotype. And you thought it was your place to police me. Why is that?" The woman opened her mouth but closed it again. She had no response, only uncertainty. Naomi could feel her growing discomfort, the wall she'd built around herself starting to crumble, piece by piece. A voice from the crowd broke the silence, one of the bystanders, a man who'd been standing a few paces back. "She's got a point," he muttered. Naomi took a step forward, closing the space between them. She didn't want to humiliate the woman, she just wanted her to see. "If I were dressed differently, if my skin were a shade lighter," Naomi said, her voice steady but pointed, "would you have said a word to me? Or would I have just been another shopper in the mall?" The woman's cheeks flushed crimson. The mask of superiority was slipping. Naomi could see it, the cracks in the woman's polished armor. And for the first time, the woman met Naomi's gaze without flinching. The woman started, her voice faltering, but no words came. Naomi folded her arms, steady and calm, giving her the space to find her truth. She waited,